Welcome to Innovative Strategies with Bill Hasse. Innovative Strategy is a show designed to help people with their business and personal financial literacy, but not in the way that you have known. This is not your grandpa's financial literacy, as Bill uses his 30-plus years in the financial industry to stretch your financial box from, let's say about a 30,000-foot view of things. Bill and his guests have helped hundreds of clients achieve and surpass their financial goals. If you have any questions, please email Bill at Hasse, that's Bill at BillHaase.com, or reach out to him right here at 216thenet@gmail.com. Welcome in to Innovative Strategies with Bill Hasse. You know, I always envision you shirtless on a white steed with that intro music.
Bill. I like how the crescendo keeps going as you're deeply
that's right
resonating with the that's, and you're going back to some of the old terminology we used in the show maybe a couple of years ago. The 30,000
foot view of things. That's for compliance reasons. We'll keep that there.
Hey, you're a basketball guy. What a week in basketball news, huh?
Yeah, good.
We lost the screamer, Bobby Knight.
Yeah. You either love him or you hate him. But as a coach, I respect the heck out of the guy for his body of work. Maybe not the same approach that I take with my team, but times were a little different in the 60s,
times were definitely
70s,
different. I don't
80s.
think that approach is too effective.
But I mean, from his lineage or his grapevine, right, is Coach K, probably one of the best coaches ever in the sport. So, we got Bobby Knight to thank for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sure there are a lot of good things from him and
the general.
You're right. I mean, either love him or you hate him. And
no, his first gig was with I think the Army. I think.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
that's what I understood.
Yeah, and that's where Coach K was at the academy. So
okay.
Yeah,
gotcha. Well, speaking of military, we have Senator Craig Wilcox with us here today. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. A pleasure to join you.
And he's also known as Colonel Wilcox.
That's right.
So thanks for the military work that you've done for this country.
Or honey. I mean, if you're married to him, might be honey as well.
Could be. I'll have to ask.
Don't forget
Janet.
the Tutu King of Woodstock.
That's right.
Yeah, I saw you have the Christmas train up in the shop already.
We do. So we actually keep that display up all year round.
Yeah.
We just change out the nature of the display probably every couple months. So it just went through a change yesterday. Halloween came down, and now we have all the newly retired pieces sitting on the display.
Well, let me be the first to thank you for waiting until after Halloween.
We can't say that we technically did. We did have a winter holiday section in the shop even a few weeks ago. Yes,
but
can never be too early.
You were downstate. You were down in a legislative session that you had going on
last week, and we'll go back next week. Yep.
Yeah, and in this particular time, these were about bills that were vetoed. Is that correct?
Correct. There were a number of bills that were either vetoed outright or what's called amendatorily vetoed, where the governor says, I prefer to strike this part, or he offers different words for certain sections.
Okay. Can he add anything?
He usually would not, like if you have a bill on a certain topic, he's not going to then add a differing section.
Okay.
That type of discussion should occur while the bill is going through the legislative process. So when he gets it to his desk, it's either a signature and it becomes the law.
Okay.
He can wait 60 days and then it becomes effective, or he can veto outright, meaning the whole bill comes back, or he takes portions. So the bill that would remove the moratorium on nuclear production or development in Illinois was an outright veto. We have one that was a property tax omnibus bill where he vetoed a certain section about nursing homes in Cook County and how they would be taxed.
Okay. oh boy, don't mess with Cook County.
Yeah, is it a silent R in there?
I believe that may be the case.
I don't think those of us in the state of Illinois know, these bills. There was 550 bills. Is that correct?
550 bills passed through both the House and the Senate.
Okay.
Somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 bills usually get filed every year. And that's challenging. Many of the bills may be filed for a PR aspect in a certain district, and there's no expectation that it'll ever go to committee. A lot of bills are filed and get stuck in assignments, meaning they don't ever get to a committee where they're actually heard.
Okay.
And then, there are, a strong number of bills, more than the 550. Some will pass just in the House and they never get called in the Senate, or vice versa. They make it out of the Senate, never get called in the House. But yeah, if you think about it, the majority of them usually take effect January 1st of the following year.
Okay.
But to think that residents are expected to know 550 law changes each year. The reality is, very few of them ultimately affect every individual in the state of Illinois equally. And so sometimes that's a challenge. And you see the newspapers and other media.
But it will affect them all financially.
Not all bills come with a financial tag. That's actually a challenge. We used to require fiscal notes on our bills. So when you were voting on a bill, you had a good idea of what the fiscal impact was to the state. Now fiscal notes are not a requirement.
Huh. So I think Ray Zelinsky said it best, and of course that's Dan Aykroyd from Tommy Boy, when he said, "What the American people doesn't know makes them the American people." Right? The frustrating thing for you, I'm going to guess, besides just the pressure from your passion and what you are trying to accomplish, is today everyone is an expert on what you do, but everyone has no idea what you do.
Well, but can't you could broaden that brush.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Everybody with the internet, right? Everybody can be an expert on every topic, or at least feel that. And the challenge, right? You always hear, we've given 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of my professional speaking. I'm doing that when we talk about this. It's all right there.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't do due diligence. We don't do our homework.
Right.
We look at Facebook, we see something, we go, oh yeah, that's true.
Or the TikTok or
and
whatever.
We don't look into the stories more deeply. We don't look into the things we believe in more deeply. We just make an assumption.
So there's a number of psychology studies that acknowledge or have found, JFK School at Harvard and others, 80% of people are comfortable making emotional decisions. Maybe as few as 20% will wait and make a logical decision based on facts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some graphs that show if you've made an emotional decision, how long it takes for facts and logic to be presented to you where you might change your opinion.
Yeah.
And vice versa, those that make a logical decision, how much emotion might get them to change. And it's at least 70% of the population that sits to that left, that emotional. And I think what you see is those in marketing and those trying to influence others understand that as well. And that emotional plea, and you see it when we have our committees down in Springfield. If you have a relatively contentious bill, guaranteed there will be an emotional only story from a witness trying to make the sway why the bill is good, as opposed to that honest debate of, is this bill written well? What are the second and third impacts that it's going to have? What's the unintended consequences? How might it be abused by someone? Where are the loopholes?
Yeah.
And that's to me, that's that frustrating part. The fact that what I think of as democracy doesn't seem to play out when we're down in Springfield, and certainly not on bills that have a major ideological difference.
Well, and I know you get emotional about, your work, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. And it's frustrating in the state of Illinois to be a Republican. Right.
We of course on 21.6 we don't necessarily talk politics or say the R word or the D word.
Okay.
Conservative might be a good way to go.
We can go with facts though.
Yeah.
The challenge, the state is probably not much more significantly than a 55-45 state.
Okay.
But when you look at the representation in the General Assembly from the gerrymandered maps, it's a supermajority, superminority structure. And so that's one of the challenges just from a state perspective. And that occurs, in a number of other states as well.
Okay, but let's get back to the emotional part and because emotion sells. Anybody who's in marketing knows that.
Yeah.
Anybody who's in sales knows that. We know facts tell and stories sell, right? And the emotional side, we were talking in the green room a bit. My daughter's looking to buy a car, and of course the salesman's coming up because, did you love it? Did you just have to have it, don't you? Just trying to push that sale. And I had told my daughter to expect that. And she reached out back out to me and she goes, I actually started laughing at the guy because I already knew what you told me that I was expecting that. And, and he was trying to push the sale. But we use that everywhere, right?
I'm going to guess that exhaust notes on cars were emotionally for the male as well back in the day. So, could we have had quiet cars at the time?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that wouldn't have sold.
Wouldn't have had that emotional.
How long did the Gremlin last?
Hey, that was a great
and
car.
The Pacer.
That V8, boy, if I could find a Gremlin, I'll tell you what. Scott can probably find me one.
Yeah, I remember the old AMC Pacers. Those were the all beautiful cars.
So only in yellow.
Only in yellow.
So as I mean, your entire life, not entire life, but adulthood has been one of service, right? Air Force, and now in this space. What is it that keeps you up, gets you up every morning? Because what you've honored us with is not a real thankable, right? Serving as you did to keep our freedoms free. Now fighting for them on the local level, in the state level, same thing, right? And all that I know, and I know you, we've known each other for a while, is an incredible human being, incredible husband, father. You do great things. And half the people that walk by you because of the letter in front or after your name hate you. You know what I mean? So what is it that just you keep giving and giving that makes you get up every morning and keep giving?
To be honest, I don't know if the precursor thought was ever the serving part. I have to acknowledge that joining the military was my path to college. So we had a junior ROTC in our high school, and parents can be persuasive. And so I wore a uniform one day a week in high school.
Yeah.
And so it was the college opportunity that got me to get into the military. My dad was Army, so there was that path a little bit. But once you got in, I don't think I saw it as service. My first job was doing acquisition. So I wouldn't have considered that a service aspect, right? But I was enjoying what I was doing. And the Air Force was great on knowing when people tend to terminate their service, and there are then opportunities that come at those times. So whether it was a leadership school or an assignment to Germany, and so the Air Force is as much responsible for keeping me in from that perspective. But I just enjoyed what I was doing at that point. Now, certainly looking back on 24 years, you can say, okay, I can see how the term service is in, right? It's in the nature of the commitment you make. But when I got out, I had only been to Chicago one weekend for St. Patrick's Day. I had not been from Illinois, and certainly, I chased a girl. So when I got here, I had to find kind of my path in Illinois, and that started with veterans organizations because that's what I had come from.
Yeah.
But at some point, I realized that I needed to get involved because 17 moves in 24 years, I couldn't tell you who the governors were of the states that I was stationed in, or who the leaders of the countries were maybe that I lived in, and certainly didn't know who was on the school board. So it was at that point, I thought of it as getting involved, but I guess it was that local service again. But that's kind of how it started. So I didn't think in my background there was I'm going to go serve. It became the nature of where I found joy and excitement and fulfillment.
That's cool.
Yeah. I'm a little embarrassed because I'm trying to think of the name of the mayor of the town I live in, and I can't.
Wayne Jett, right here.
Now, for the challenge, right, in Illinois, with the number of political boundaries we have and the number of organizations, I think at one point when I tried to figure out, okay, who are all the elected officials that I'm personally supposed to be holding accountable? I think I counted it as few as 57. I couldn't tell you what 57 of my immediate family are doing at any one time, much less
Right.
Yeah.
keep up on the number of politicians. So it is not uncommon, right? The Senate district,
And those lines are like, they're not solid lines.
we don't make it easy, right? We
Right.
don't have matching political boundaries almost anywhere across the board.
Right. There's no, this square here covers that and square here. If anybody knows anything about Chicago and Illinois, the lines are blurry and often changing, and difficult to keep up with. But yeah, it's an interesting state.
So in a perfect world, if I were doing my job to the 100% best capability, the majority of people I talk to every day wouldn't know who I am
Correct.
or what my role is beforehand. And that's just the nature of how large a Senate district is. If you find that you are only talking to people that already know you, then you're missing the rest of your district.
Yeah.
So
No, and I liked how you got out. A few weeks ago, you were out going to some of the different towns and holding, conversations. I believe
Conversations Untapped or Conversations and Coffee. And then we did the Medicare 101 recently. We do the senior fairs. So you have to be out around the district.
Right. Well, I met you at one of those Conversations Untapped. But yeah, you're
Well, Bill,
constantly out
you were just there drinking. I mean,
Hey, I bought the round.
oh, okay.
But but yeah, you got to get out there. You got to be. Even when you were going through election process, I remember Scott Giles, who good morning, Scott. See that you're joining us here. Scott and I were out there putting those signs up and taking them down, and it was most impressive how the process. Clearly, being military, you have processes and procedures, and you're kind of well known for that.
We do like to pride ourselves that we had one heck of a team and a process. And I don't know how many people know, but we had it so well set that we had paths where we would go pull a sign and put it somewhere else. And it just made it look like we had that many more. And we were one of the first to ever get 4x4s at every poll location in those early races.
Okay.
And so it was a great team, but it was, we would do a drive. You can only put so many signs in the back of a car.
Well, it's funny story is I recall almost getting spit on by a llama at a farm. We went and picked up a sign and I look over and this thing comes running at me and I'm like, the heck is that? I don't know if it's a llama or something like that. And all I was told was back up or you're going to get spit on. But
so the joy of this business
Yeah.
is I get to go do business tours, and we did a tour with Naturally McHenry last year doing farms, and I legitimately got spit right over my shoulder. It just missed me, but we were out feeding them, and that's their nature, right? And can it be in spite? Absolutely, but it's also a natural process for them. So,
well, I hadn't done anything wrong, so at least yes. But and if you saw the muscles on this thing, it's not like I was going to go kick its butt. I would if I could run real faster, but
now luckily we don't have kangaroos here because there are some muscled kangaroos out on videos on the net.
no, I really didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
So you just got out of session. You were working on these vetoed bills, but you go back next week. Don't
We
you?
go back next week for the final 3 days of veto, and the majority of the vetoed bills will be the topic next week. We did some other bills that weren't vetoed, and that's not uncommon for veto session to be treated like regular session. So there's bills that had almost made it through, last year that can be revived in veto and
Now,
get some attention.
Can you guys override the veto?
We can.
Okay.
That is a possibility. Needs a supermajority vote. So typically you're looking at, 30 votes in the Senate to pass something,
Supermajority is
36 now. Yep.
Oh, okay.
So you get to that point of an override. But if you look at the bills that the governor vetoed, there are a couple that we don't expect to get called. So there won't be an attempt at all. So his veto will stand. And then there are others where the discussion is, do we just accept the amendatory veto or do we attempt to override it? And our side may not necessarily know till Tuesday or Wednesday which way the process may flow out. And there are certainly discussions that sometimes we're involved in and sometimes we're not.
Gotcha. I mean, one of the big topics I've got to imagine is guns, right?
Guns has been a big topic in the past. I don't think we'll see, well, there's a potential for another bill, but certainly there were some major pieces of legislation that Illinois has passed that are coming into play. And one right now is the assault weapons ban and the registration process if you legally owned them beforehand. There's been a lot of news, a lot of questions that constituents have with what the Illinois State Police put out in the amounts. The number of people that have already registered since I think it opened up October 1st is a small percentage, which is indicative that it's a challenging process. And the state police have had or are having some meetings throughout the state to answer and address these questions. So I expect that process to change a little bit. But yeah, that January 1st timeline is coming up despite the fact that the law likely will end up in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's still a lot of work to be done there, but that's interesting, and I think you'll probably wind up, and this, that a lot of people are going to just hold off, and they're going to wait for this process to be completed before. They're not going to do it until they absolutely have to.
I think that's probably a very valid concern for most firearms owners.
Yeah, I'm just kind of basing that off of the few that I know, their mindsets on that. But because we've had fluctuation, but there's, a lot of other issues. What are some of the other important issues that you're dealing with for your constituents?
So one of the number one is the Invest in Kids Act that is set to expire, and that was a program set up I think 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and it allowed for private donations to be given for scholarships for underprivileged kids to get out of public schools that were not benefiting them. And we have plenty in the 32nd district that are benefited from that. Okay. At this point, it looks like the program could either be completely ended, which means you have kids that are currently in school, benefits of one of these scholarships that may not be able to continue.
Taken back out of the school. And
we've been told there has been a bill considered that would reduce the amount of the program and maybe require a change in who's eligible for the scholarships, which would probably be detrimental for the 32nd district. Our side, we see this opportunity and it's not true school choice, right? You still have to, seek it out and get the scholarship, but it is an option for parents and kids who the school is either failing or just not working for them to seek out a different opportunity. And the bigger part, the teachers unions are saying that this takes public funds from public schools. One, absolutely not true. Now, do they have a minor argument that the tax credit from these private donations arguably reduces the overall tax base in Illinois? Sure, but it's not a direct pull from education like the lottery bill was, right? We're going to pass the lottery in Illinois. The funds are going to go to education. Well, that was true. The lottery funds did go to education, but all the other funding that was going to education was removed. So that was a true steal from the public schools.
Yeah, and when you talk about schools, you're going right up my alley here, because I've done a lot of research on schools in the last 2 years, and I would do anything to get my kids out of public schools. I think they're so dumbed down now. It's pointless. It's actually doing more harm than good, in my mind.
So part of me does look at the Invest in Kids being stopped a little bit as, they had fought it from the beginning, but the number of people that chose homeschooling or chose private schools through the COVID time because of the significant mandate structure, the closing schools and the mandates during COVID, I think this is almost a counterbalance to try and slow down people leaving the public school system because it becomes a challenge.
Well, believe it or not, I've got an opinion about that. I don't think there's much different with public school now as it was back in the 70s and 80s. And here's what I'm saying. The difference, I believe, is the attention at home. Okay. So unfortunately, I think a lot of Americans have said, go to daycare. And they're treating school like a daycare. When those kids come home, mom and dad have no idea what they're doing, what they're studying, what's being said, what's being taught. I lay it on the parents. My kids come home, we still sit down at dinner as a family, right? And we've got very busy schedules, but we make that time. We still work with our daughter on, it's a great school district here in McHenry, on with her homework. We have conversations with the teachers, right? So I think the difference being is that the idea of public school is you go let them educate where they should be supporting the education. You understand what
Well,
I'm
I
saying?
agree with you, but you're a minority. You're a small,
I'm not.
You're a small percentage of people and families that do that. To be honest with you, in my
Well, right,
research,
but we can't bet there are a ton of great teachers and blessed teachers and
there are
excellent people,
absolutely.
and to just say public education is hard, and it's a big generalization.
Well, okay, so I've learned teachers don't even write their own curriculums anymore. And here in Illinois, depending upon where you are, say you're in Cook County, you're in Chicago, and they teach to pass a test. And if the kids don't pass the test, the teacher loses their job. I know this because this happened to my brother-in-law. And they are great teachers. I think they're handcuffed. And what they can teach, what's out there, STEM.
So
right?
to tie back to earlier, right? The second and third order effects of a certain bill,
Mhm.
right? That which you decide to measure will get done.
Right.
The question is, did you pick the right thing to measure? And did you create an incentive to meet that or a disincentive to get there?
Right.
And so if you talk about,
that's-
teaching to pass a test, it's because we set the mark as that test, right or wrong,
Mhm.
but then we didn't adjust the process to discourage teaching to the test, right? The
Correct,
test
right.
was intended,
Great point.
arguably, to ensure teaching covered
Mhm.
the right array of topics and that the test would be the proof that they had learned all that. Well, if there's no true
Mhm.
back and forth look at what happened and they then teach to the test, you created something meant to do good, but it's in effect created a negative outcome.
And you run into each and every one of these school districts, and they're like their own little world. I mean, you try to go in there and make any changes or try to help raise the educational level. Good luck, boy.
So at least Illinois is not a curriculum-based state, right? The
Yeah.
curriculum isn't dictated by the state. We're a standards-based state.
And typically, state by state does do that.
A little bit of difference around the country. But when you set those standards, you can certainly influence to a certain aspect or maybe influence to a certain book that may be out there to fill that curriculum.
Mhm.
But the structure of what we're teaching is certainly a significant change from what we were just talking about. But I agree that involvement of the parents is critical in the education, right?
Mhm.
Education
It is.
starts at home.
All right.
The public school is there to augment that.
Mhm.
Now, if your parents or the majority of parents have seen it as daycare, then the teachers can only notice that and respond to it. And so you
Mhm.
said parents see it as daycare. I think that an equal part of that is the lack of respect.
Oh
Whether
yeah.
that's teachers' respect to the kids, certainly kids'
Absolutely.
respect of the
The teachers.
teachers, but you don't stop there. It's parents' respect for the teachers or teachers' respect for the parents as
Correct.
well.
Yeah.
And that part has degraded, and we can argue probably
Oh yeah.
all day
No. I
on
I
which
agree with
came
you.
first, but those are all kind of tied
I mean,
together.
Now that I'm old, right, and I look and go,
You're old. What does that
listen.
make me?
listen, none of my teachers were this young ever. Right? They were all old, right? But now, to your point, when we went to school, the teachers were in a suit or suit coat, at least, right? Unless you were the gym teacher. Now, it's hard for me sometimes to pick out who's the student and who's the teacher. They show up
Yeah.
looking like,
If you looked
Right.
over the shoulder during any of the COVID Zooms,
Yeah.
I mean, the number of teachers that were on an exercise bike in sweats running a class, I mean, the
Right.
things that occurred. And so from that COVID lockdown, schools closed, I think a lot of parents became more aware
yes,
of what was happening. Now,
yes.
were those Zooms truly indicative of what was happening
Right.
in the classroom? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think Mrs. Jones has an exercise bike in her biology
Well, and
class.
the school system did not adjust very well, let's say, to be kind, to the pandemic and the change into the Zoom and how you're going to teach, in these formats, as well as I say, business, especially in banking, made that adjustment very, very well. And in many cases, were more productive than at any other time. The schools, I think, fell far short of that. We're paying the price, right? We're seeing kids that we're seeing lower grades. We're seeing lower ACTs, SATs.
Change in behavior,
Change in
lack
behaviors,
of progression through a couple of
Lack
years
of
of
social
growing
skills,
up. Absolutely.
and insecurities and and that was not just, we're not just talking school K through 12. I'm talking college kids as well. I mean,
Oh, sure.
many kids that they're home from college. I have parents, we've talked about this, where they asked me if I could come have a conversation with their son or daughter that was graduated college last year, was living in the basement, didn't have a job. It's been a year. Can you help? I'm like, can't. You sent your kid to college.
I'm gonna shift gears a little bit here.
Yep.
Because we could talk all day about education, right?
True.
Right now, a big issue across America, not just in Illinois, is affordable housing. Are y'all men and women there? Is this something that's on a plate? Is there a bill? Is there something happening that's talking about, because rates going up? I know you don't control that. Housing price going up, again, you don't control that, but this is a big concern for a lot of people.
And there's plenty of discussion, and it can range anything from what I would call the rent control structure, right? Mm-hmm. You set that this is what rents are going to be. And I think that just encourages owners to disinvest in those properties.
Yeah.
And they're certainly not going to build more. And you ultimately, I think there's plenty of studies that have found rent control areas actually reduce the quality of that rental property and reduce the availability as well. So I think while it may emotionally sound good, the government fixed this problem, it ultimately exacerbates the problem. Mm-hmm. So the challenge is, how is it going to get built? Is it going to be private only? Well, then that's a return on investment question. And obviously we have plenty of developers who are not seeing the right return on investment to make that a part,
value's not there,
which means government needs to provide an incentive in some manner. Well, are those incentives structured to properly get what we're looking for? We have had some developments right here in McHenry, where a certain number of the rooms are saved for veterans or saved for low income. So the question is, can we find the bill that where we provide incentives, we honestly talk through second, third order impact?
Yep.
What are the disincentives? How is someone going to abuse it, and cover that?
Right.
But there are ways, right? If there's something you want more of, government tends to find that with incentivization. If there are things government wants less of, it's often done through taxation. The question is, can we get that right? And the only way you can get it right is to bring that bill forward, have the full debate back and forth, listen to both sides, and find that compromise. And I think that's, as we talk about the frustration for folks that are in government, it's that failure to find compromise where if someone's coming in and it's my way or else, that provides that frustration.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of that, because we're seeing that everywhere around here. Look at the government. Where was the incentivization for the flu shot or for the COVID shots?
Well, it wasn't incentivizing. Well, no, it was. Some places
we
you could
just
get a
talked
free lunch, or you could get an ice cream or a coffee. So
Right.
there were some attempts at incentivizing, but it was actually probably more disincentivizing non-compliance, right? If you saw where, in theory, the discussions of a vaccine passport, where can't you go if you're not back? I mean, so we had a lot of what I would call manipulative government actions in that point in time.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think what it did was it just created wholesale greater distrust in government, right? Members of Congress, members in government, I have to acknowledge in my second term, I'm part of they now.
Sure.
So, part of that lack of trust in government. And I think that manifests itself throughout so much else that happens day to day.
I agree.
And that's the tough part. I think that we have to recognize that they in government, myself, have to figure out how to regain that trust. And I think it comes from being completely honest with the public.
Yeah.
I think there's too much, well, the public can't handle that, or the public won't understand the complexity. No, let's present it to them. Let's listen to them and then come to a final solution. But being honest with the public.
Wait a minute. I always thought the government said,
for the people,
what do we care if they understand or not? We're just going to shove it down their throats, and they're going to either figure it out or they're not. But, I really find that interesting, to find the incentives and the disincentives, because it's doing due diligence. It's doing your homework, because know there are people out there who are going to look at it every which way they can think of it, and how to take advantage of it. There's always going to be that.
You can just look at our criminal law, right?
Yeah.
If we could write the perfect set of criminal structure, then there'd be no crime. But the reality is we're always chasing what society comes up with.
Now they don't arrest anybody anymore.
Well, that's one way to claim that crime is down, right? If there's no prosecutions or no arrests, then there won't be records of it.
That's right.
The challenge is, right, government, in theory, should always be chasing problems. It's very hard for government to foresee what might come. And actually, I don't think you want government front running and projecting what they think might happen and trying to fix it ahead of time. So we're always going to be a little bit behind. The challenge is we shouldn't be in a position where we try and fix one problem but create a bigger problem, right? Mm-hmm. There are some who believe that government is there to create a crisis, solve the crisis, which creates another crisis, so they can come back and provide a solution to that crisis. That shouldn't be the public's perception of government.
Well, and everything evolves around money, right? The government does, and we do see how they'll shift. We'll see shift in stories in order to get away from one story. We'll create another story, and that builds distrust as well out there. But again, to me, it's always follow the money. The money will always give you the answers that you're looking for. But and everybody's always looking for more money, whether you're an individual person or you're a politician or your government, and everybody wants more money.
And if you have any you want to get rid of, go ahead and send it to 216 the net. I mean, we'll put it to good use.
And it's just in my name, please.
That's right. Attention, Bill Hussey.
Yeah, we're supporting the show.
That's right.
And to cover those guest speaker stipends.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
So the challenge, right? Whether you're in a capitalist society, a socialist society, a communist society, that is the true incentive that is here in our world. You would like to think that it is love and understanding and being a good human and helping others, but you can't get away from the almighty dollar. And so, yes, that is one of the key incentives that are in this world, whether it's a government incentive or just a personal incentive. So following the money tends to lead to understanding motive, which then understand, okay, why is something done?
Yeah. There was just something put out in the national government about giving something like $30 billion to Israel, and one side was voting to give it, and the other side said no, we're not going to allow this to pass because there's no money in it for Ukraine. Like, well, okay, don't they already have like $300 billion of our money?
So I think, you're talking that foreign aid bill that the president has requested, which tied funding for Ukraine to funding for Israel to funding for the border and so there are those in government, and I think rightly so, that say, one, if we're going to be giving foreign aid, we need to understand exactly where it's going. Have that accounting structure in place, right? We do it for federal grants and others, right? There's big reporting
C-17 full of dollar bills and drop them off on the airport.
Well, we have.
We've done that.
Unfortunately, we have. And so those that have opposed it may not, in theory, be opposed to the aid. It's the structure and how it goes.
Yeah.
And so there are some that want it broken apart and have a separate vote for Ukraine, for Israel, for the border. And now, right, ideally, every bill in government should be a single subject bill where you can have that thing. The reality is you have to get to certain vote totals to pass anything.
Yeah.
So things are often brought together to be that instead of a compromise on the single subject bill, you add the additional, whether it was
everybody put their little kick in.
Days of a pork amendment appropriation in there.
I need
so-
a bridge in my town, you know.
But
road
that's the nature of
done.
politics, right? If I
Yeah.
can't get a
Quid
bill,
pro quo.
if I can't get a bill to 30, 60, and 1 in Illinois, then I'm not getting a bill passed. And,
Yeah.
and so those are the
Right.
those are the difficult challenges of politics.
Yeah.
But it
Well,
is a
bringing it-
reality both in DC and in state capitals.
Bringing it back into the state of Illinois, how big of a deal right now is immigration?
Well, you just saw the Chicago mayor
Mm-hmm.
asking for $5 billion from the feds
Yeah.
to handle the issue.
He flew out to DC to go get some money, and
Flew out
and,
to DC,
our
so did
illustrious president flew somewhere else.
right. Well, so did
It wasn't there.
So did the New York mayor. Unfortunately, he
Right.
had to return because his fundraiser got raided by the feds.
Yes, true.
So
FBI
right, there's no
raided
doubt.
his house.
But you can go back, right? It's a bigger issue today than it should have been, right?
Correct.
It was a nice emotional aspect to say we're a sanctuary city in Chicago or in the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
Without understanding what was that incentive you just gave.
What that
Right.
meant.
We do healthcare incentives for asylum seekers, illegal immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
You have provided incentives for people to want to come here. So forget whether there are
Yeah.
states that are busing
Right.
people here or not because of the sanctuary structure. If given a choice, are you coming to the one of two states that will give you healthcare, will give you housing vouchers, will do I mean, we made it so welcoming that we have brought the
Yeah,
issue
I would
to a front
imagine-
here as
look,
well.
Look, I'm crossing over the border here, trying to get into the U.S. I don't know anything about that. I don't know that certain states have health care and others don't.
I'm not so sure
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
certainly, if you take what we would like to think is the true immigrant that America wants to bring, that we
Yeah.
used to bring,
The
right?
tired.
Someone looking for a much better opportunity.
Yeah.
But 50 years ago, someone looking for that opportunity was also very interested in becoming American. And whether that was assimilating
Yeah.
into our structure today, we have so many immigrants who still put their former country flag up or believe that they're still from whatever country they
Yeah.
came from, and that American part is third, fourth, or fifth. So if that's the avenue we are going to go, we're going to continue to have challenges, right? And the Israel-Hamas fight is highlighting a significant amount of that in the U.S. Now, I'm not arguing that you get rid of your culture or you forget where you came from.
Right.
But to truly be an American means understanding that we have a different structure of government and
Yeah.
different expectations of how community works. At the individual level, everyone probably understands that, right? And if you talk to
Yeah.
any individual, you're going
Yeah.
to come to an agreement and a feeling of mutual respect and giving and helping. It's when things are presented as a generalization in mass that now you are creating divides.
So I truly love what you're saying. And President Obama on David Letterman's My Next Guest Is show, right? If you haven't seen it, it's
Great
good.
show.
He said
Almost as
something
good as this one.
almost. He said something that was very striking to me. And he says, we can't have a very good logical conversation anymore because of the algorithms that people get their information from. So your algorithm gives you a set of facts that go along with what your algorithm says you should receive. Mine is different. So now I'm fighting with you because I say, well, the facts are this. And you say, no, the facts are this. And nobody really understands what the true facts. So now I get mad at you, even though you're my friend, because you're lying to me because my algorithm said, this is what I Googled. And so the frustration is with everything. And here's what I say is these people are human beings. Now, my grandfather came over to Ellis Island, right? He stowed away on a boat from Wales. He and his brother came here, went through the proper procedures to become an American, right? So I'm not too far removed from it, if you understand what I'm saying. Okay. So that's what this great nation was built on.
We've seen the quirks in you. You know,
Right,
we get
right.
it.
This is what this great nation was built on is that melting pot. What we say, send us your tired, right? But again, to your point, is you want to be an American, not just rent
Well,
America.
let's
right?
keep in mind, okay, and let's get to the financial side of this. When America is hurting economically, And in a sense, we are now, right? We have the highest credit card debt ever,
Ever.
the highest interest rate ever.
No, not the highest.
No, on
interest
credit
rate
card
ever.
debt. On
The
credit
highest
card debt.
average credit card debt
Yeah,
interest
on
rate
credit
Okay.
card debt. Yeah.
is 20.72%. That's the highest ever. All right, as of today. And the most money on credit, on debt. We don't talk a lot about that out in the media and whatnot. We talk about GDP was 4.9%. We're booming. You know, people are spending money. They're spending money they don't have, and that's a freight train coming at you. That's impossible to stop. Forget about the interest rates. Clearly, the Feds knew about the unemployment numbers coming out today when they were talking on Wednesday, and they should. But the rest of the world hurts more. When America hurts, the rest of the world hurts more. I've done business globally. I know. I was in Dubai last year, and I got approached several times by people saying, obviously knowing I'm American because I dressed like one, I presume, and but everyone asked me, "What the hell's going on over there?" And because they're all hurting, and these people were from all different parts of the world. That
Dubai is a very big melting pot city
Yeah.
without a doubt.
yeah, and interesting place. But they were all saying the same thing because what they were saying to me was they're getting crushed wherever their home is, and so they want to come to the U.S. Why not be the place where we're the ones who buy all the goods? Why not be with that crowd instead of the other crowd on the other end, hoping that the goods that are being bought are mine, and when they're not, life gets really tough.
Well, and that's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
There's no doubt we are a consumerist society.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we also used to be a manufacturing society.
Used to be.
Right? Used to be.
Yeah.
So COVID certainly highlighted the supply chain. No matter what
Right.
business you were in, you likely had some supply chain issues.
Right.
And so as we go to that global integrated market, there are things that can disrupt it, whether it be war, whether it can be typhoons. I mean, there's so many things that can interrupt it. And as a great business person, right, we got to just-in-time inventory. Why do I need a big warehouse of stuff if I can have it the day before I need it or the hour before I need it? And that is where a significant crunch kind of came from.
It did.
Now, capitalist society, growing through mergers and acquisitions to get to a legal monopolistic structure is a great incentive for businesses, or a perverse incentive for businesses, right?
Yep.
If you can kind of control that market, then you can dictate your profit margins. Well, where are
Or
we
collude
seeing,
with others to do
right,
so.
where are we seeing that consolidation? Many major markets that we have, we're
Yeah.
seeing that type of consolidation, which puts the consumer at a significant disadvantage, whether it's in the banks or healthcare
more so
or
than
education or absolutely.
before,
So how do we break that down, or how do we break it apart? It used to be, if you look at our small towns in America, there used to be small mom and pops with either manufacturing or sales, or that kind of fell apart as the big Walmarts or the Sam's Club.
Mhm.
If we want to truly have a vibrant community, we need to support local, right? You need to think
I agree.
about, am I going to order that on Amazon because it'll be on my doorstep tomorrow? Or do I go somewhere else, right? You order from Amazon, that money's now in corporate Amazon.
Yeah.
You go to a mom and pop or an independent business, you are feeding a family, you are paying
your community.
salaries to other community members, right?
Yeah.
Now, you can't just do it from that perspective. Our local electeds in Illinois are not truly incentivized to bring in prime employers, right? A prime employer is someone who is truly hiring and creating a new market.
Okay.
And that then brings up pop-ups around it, whether it's
Mhm.
the Subway shops or the deli or
Yeah.
so right now, our elected officials at the local level get incentivized by the sales tax revenue because that's what gets returned to them.
Okay.
Even though the state does not return the full local government distributive fund of 10% to the local governments,
Right.
that sales tax part is the incentive. So short-term thinkers might look to fill a vacant building or a vacant lot with something that generates sales tax,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to truly seeing 5, 10, 20 years down the road that the benefit really is in a prime employer that will then lead to those naturally filling with other
Mhm.
service industries. And so that's something that I've tried to bring forward. Every area has those local fights. This municipality is neighboring to this municipality, and you fight for moving a business, right?
Yeah.
You've poached a business across the boundary because it benefits
Can I
you.
get Trader Joe's in here when
Right.
we're fighting over
What I would
here?
love to see is the state incentivize co-beneficial development of those border areas, right? You get two neighboring municipalities agree to, and maybe it's a development that truly fits in one of them, but
It's
it
still
benefits
local,
both
it's still doing local business.
local business. But we don't do that. So it's all sales. So there need to be some changes in how the state incentivizes, right? And you want to talk, crazy aspects. An electric battery manufacturer, Gotion, tied to China, is going to be given significant Illinois taxpayer dollars and federal tax dollars to bring maybe 1,200 jobs to a smaller area.
Mhm.
Wow. I mean, if you looked at that dollar amount and said, what would that have done had we incentivized municipalities to collaborate in the development and significant difference in view? But
I'm sure people aren't real thrilled about the fact that we're giving incentivized dollars, real American dollars, to Chinese companies to build businesses here. If we didn't learn from Foxconn, boy, oh boy, that's a big lesson right there just over the border in Wisconsin. They were building this massive facility, and true to form, they imploded, and they're building a much smaller facility.
But despite everything I just talked about getting prime employers in, the fact that the system right now encourages those prime employers to pit municipalities or states against each other for the largest take of taxpayer dollars, that does not truly benefit the states or those municipalities.
Right.
It hurts the taxpayers and benefits the corporation, the business.
Corporation,
Somehow we need to think about how to fix that, right? We should
Yeah.
not be allowing large corporations or even small corporations to be pitting tax-funded entities against each other to get the bit, and
especially non-American businesses.
right. Well, and regardless of where even
Yeah,
American business, even family-owned
true,
business. I mean,
true.
so that is a long-term change that needs to be kind of considered.
That's a big shift.
And
to try and
the
shift.
challenge, right? You want businesses to survive and thrive.
Mhm.
But what we shouldn't be doing as government is investing in business, because I guarantee these elected officials have no insight into what that business model is, how productive are they likely to be, or what happened in the South Side. They wanted certain businesses, South Side of Chicago, they incentivized certain businesses to come in. And as soon as that incentivized time period was over,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Hold on.
And so, no way does government know well enough what hooks to put in there that will truly keep them there. And so we're always going to be at a disadvantage if you have elected officials negotiating with strong business individuals. That contract is going to be one-sided away from what the taxpayer would benefit from.
And let's be as honest as we can. We're dealing with human beings, and as long as they're part of the equation, ain't never going to be perfect, and not everybody's going to be happy with whatever happens, right? But it's these kind of conversations. I mean, I know you're busy. I appreciate you coming and spend some time with Bill and us, because it is enlightening. It does, the most government that I learned about was in 11th grade in high school, right? And I was probably not paying attention for 90% of that. And that's why when I talk with people, I sometimes get frustrated with what's happening across the world, because of the dominoes. It's never an easy fix, right? World politics is complicated, and there are several pieces that have to go together. And what you're kind of looking at, Shana just said she was commenting on my algorithm,
Back to the algorithm, yep.
But she says homelessness, the sanctuary cities this far north, very, very cruel. Very cruel and deadly, because hey, it's going to drop below zero. And we're saying, come up here and freeze.
They just said in Chicago, I think I saw
warming
that
buses.
they're building a tent city. And a tent city, I mean, we already had our first snow.
Yeah. It was chilly.
Yeah.
Come on. I was living in a tent, and in certain countries, we had snow on September 23rd, 12 to 18 inches.
All right.
Right. Depending on what you're doing. If you're talking
Correct.
about the traditional camping tent, that is not much protection from the
Correct.
elements. There's no doubt.
No, and it's not like these people knew to bring down jackets and hats and gloves and extra socks and things of that nature.
Yep. But I think Shanna did remind us we didn't go into that algorithm structure enough, and
Yeah.
so
Okay.
yeah, right. Social media has, without a doubt, or the internet has, without a doubt, allowed individuals who have an interest in a certain topic to be led to certain amounts of information that is sent to them that's different than what is sent to the other, possibly as simply as a few adjectives or verbs you put in your search.
Yeah, that censorship a little bit. Yeah.
I believe I remember a study that was done that kind of looked at extremist organizations in the US, and that as many as 80% of the membership never intended to be a part of that organization, but the way they search for things and then the additional information they got led that path.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if we think artificial intelligence is going to fix that,
Good boy.
I personally think it exacerbates it, right? So if we look at just artificial intelligence as a whole, right, it's taking the whole of human produced information and then comes to conclusions. What happens when AI, looking at that conglomerate of information, comes to this conclusion and produces it? Now that conclusion is additional info on the web.
Right.
And AI likely will get to that extremist view much quicker than humans ever will.
Right.
So yeah, Shanna said
Yeah.
it's about garnering different perspectives. If we can't find a way to force an algorithm that says, here's what you were looking for, here's an opposing view, right? If you arguably that's what we want.
Correct.
But that comes back to that education.
Yeah.
Can we teach people how to critically think versus teaching them to pass a test?
Yeah.
And arguably that's what our education system should be doing, is providing a critical thought process for people to come to their own conclusions, not to be told what a conclusion or an outcome should be, but to garner and think about how do you find different data sources, think about it in your mind and come to your belief or your conclusion.
I mean, when you talk AI, though, I mean, you could put in certain words or whatever, and you get a certain response back. And then you can go take one word out and you get a completely different response. You put another word in, you get a completely different
But remember, a few
response.
years ago, there used to be a thing, if you put these words into Google, I put these words into Google, you put them into Google, and we'll compare what we get.
Yeah, we did that.
And they
on
were
Uncle
always
Pete's.
different,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that was that early acknowledgement that, hey, we are being led, not fed.
Right. My mother-in-law warned my wife of artificial intelligence when she said she was going to marry me. Thank you very much.
Well, well, I can't believe we only have a couple minutes left.
Yeah. I could sit here
It
and
has
chat
flown
all day.
by.
And listen, here's what I love. And again, thank you so much, because just your ability to speak eloquently at my level, right? To help me understand. And I think a lot of times we don't look at, we see a topic that's being argued about or worked on, or a bill is trying to be passed. But I love that you said, let's take a look at the second, third, and fourth domino that are going to fall on this. And does it make sense?
Which
And
most people don't do.
I say, no, of course not. You're right.
I have to admit, I do appreciate that. And you've opened my eyes up too, is looking at incentives and disincentives and who's this going to help versus who could this harm? It's nice to know that thought process is going on, as opposed to what we think is going on, where, some senator out there who lacks any kind of real education, and he's just making decisions and choices that benefits him.
There's no doubt that I benefit from enjoying being a devil's advocate, or the devil's in the details. So I could convince myself by arguing against my own opinion. And if you're not able to have that debate, or if you can't argue for the opposition's view, then you truly don't understand the issue.
Right.
Because that requires acknowledging what the opposition believes. Or what facts they have that you need to consider. And so being able to, go through debate structure or be a devil's advocate and get that attention to details, I think is critical.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you're in the legislature, whether you're an elected official, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a human being,
Yeah.
you have to be able to have some sense of how to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think President Reagan said it best, right? The scariest 8 words are
government is here.
I'm from the government. I'm
Here
here
to
to help.
Right. I want to thank Shana and
Yes.
Scott and John Mackey,
Yeah,
a good
John's out
friend of
there.
mine,
Yeah.
our credit genius gentleman,
Yeah.
stepping in here. He's been on the show as well. Craig, it's been eye-opening.
Yeah.
And I know we barely scratched the surface of conversations that we could do all day long on any one of these subjects that we brought up today. But thanks for coming in.
Absolutely. And let's make sure we continue to do this on a relatively routine basis.
I'm
Yeah.
more than happy to.
Hey, the mic's always here for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Bravos here at 21.6 the Net. Thank you for getting caught in the net. This has been another great episode of Innovative Strategies with Bill Huss.